I nearly went bankrupt on my first house flip. Everyone said I was crazy, a 22-year-old kid with $3,000 to his name trying to compete with seasoned investors. But that disaster became the foundation of my billion-dollar empire. Let me tell you how a moldy, rat-infested house in Newark almost destroyed my life and why it was the best thing that ever happened to me. This was 2018. I was living in my mom's basement in Hoboken, New Jersey, working at a dead-end job at a local electronics store for $12 an hour. Every night after work, I'd watch YouTube videos about real estate investing. Guys like Grant Cardone and BiggerPockets were showing these incredible success stories. Million-dollar portfolios, financial freedom, private jets. And I thought, if they can do it, why can't I? The problem was money, or lack of it. After rent, food, and student loan payments, I had maybe $200 left each month. My credit score was 580. Terrible. Banks wouldn't even look at me twice. My mom thought I was living in a fantasy world. "Michael," she'd say, "you can barely afford gas for your car. How are you going to buy a house?" But I had this burning obsession. Every morning, I'd drive through different neighborhoods before work, looking at properties. I'd memorize addresses, research recent sales, calculate potential profits. My co-workers thought I was losing it. But I knew there was money to be made if I could just get that first deal. Then I found it. 247 Clinton Avenue, Newark. A small 2-bedroom house that had been sitting on the market for 8 months. The listing photos looked rough, peeling paint, broken windows, overgrown yard. But the price caught my attention, $28,000. In a neighborhood where other houses were selling for $80,000 to $120,000. I drove there on a Saturday morning. The place was worse than the photos. Much worse. The front porch was sagging, the roof had visible holes, and when I looked through the broken window, I saw water damage everywhere. Mold climbing the walls like something out of a horror movie. The smell hit me even from outside, this mixture of decay and something I couldn't identify. Any normal person would have walked away. But I saw potential. The bones of the house were solid. The foundation looked good. It was in a neighborhood that was slowly gentrifying. Young professionals were starting to move in because it was 20 minutes from Manhattan. I started doing math in my head. If I could buy it for $28,000, put in maybe $15,000 in renovations, I could sell it for at least $75,000. That's a $32,000 profit on my first deal. The problem was, I didn't have $28,000. I had $3,200 in my savings account. That's when I learned about creative financing. I spent the next 2 weeks researching everything. Hard money lenders, private investors, seller financing, partnerships. I called probably 50 different lenders. Most hung up when they heard my credit score and income. But one guy, Tony Marcelli, agreed to meet me. Tony was this old-school Italian guy who'd been flipping houses since the 1980s. We met at a diner in Jersey City. He looked at my financial statements, laughed, and said, "Kid, you got more balls than brains. But I respect the hustle." He offered me a deal. He'd loan me the $28,000 at 12% interest, plus 3 points up front. I'd have 6 months to renovate and sell, or he'd take the property. It was a terrible deal. The interest alone would cost me $1,680, plus the $840 in points. But was my only shot. I shook his hand. The seller was this older woman whose father had died and left her the property. She lived in Florida and just wanted it gone. When I made the $28,000 offer, she accepted immediately. No negotiations. No inspection period. I should have known that was a red flag. The closing was scheduled for a Thursday. I took the day off work, wore my only decent suit, and met at the title company. As I signed paper after paper, my hands were shaking. This was it. I was about to become a real estate investor. All those nights watching YouTube videos, all those drives through neighborhoods, all the rejection from lenders, it was all leading to this moment. The keys felt heavier than they should have when they handed them to me. I drove straight to the property, called my mom, and said, "Ma, I did it. I bought a house." She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I hope you know what you're doing." Walking through the front door with my own key was surreal. But that feeling lasted about 30 seconds. Because as I started really examining the property, I realized I'd made a massive mistake. The water damage wasn't just cosmetic. The subfloor in the bathroom had rotted completely through. You could see straight down to the crawl space. The electrical system was from the 1950s and was a fire hazard. The plumbing was cast iron that had corroded to the point where water barely trickled out of the faucets. And the smell I couldn't identify from outside? Dead animals. Lots of them. In the walls, in the crawl space, everywhere. I sat on the front steps and called 3 different contractors for estimates. The first guy took one look and said, "Son, you're looking at $40,000 minimum to make this place livable." The second contractor was even worse, $45,000, and that's if we don't find asbestos. The third guy just shook his head and walked away. My budget was $15,000. I was already in for $29,680 with the loan costs. If renovations cost $40,000, I need almost $70,000 total into a house I'd be lucky to sell for $75,000. The math didn't work. I was looking at breaking even at best or losing everything at worst. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running numbers over and over. Tony's loan payment was due in 30 days, $2,800. I had $520 left in my checking account. My job paid $1,920 a month after taxes. After my expenses, I had maybe $400 left each month. There was no way I could make the payments and afford renovations. I considered calling Tony and begging him to take the property back, cut my losses at $29,680, and learn an expensive lesson. My mom certainly thought that's what I should do. "Michael, this is why I told you to be realistic. You can't compete with people who've been doing this for decades." But something inside me refused to quit. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stupidity. Probably both. I decided I was going to figure this out, even if it killed me. I started watching YouTube videos obsessively, but this time focused on DIY renovation. I'd work my regular job during the day, then spend every evening and weekend at the property. I bought basic tools with credit cards, a circular saw, drill, hammer, measuring tape. I learned plumbing from YouTube University, electrical work from online forums, drywall repair from trial and error. The work was brutal. I'd never done construction before. My hands were constantly cut up and bleeding. I went through probably 20 bandages a week. The smell inside the house was so bad I had to wear a respirator. I pulled out 14 dead rats from the walls. 14. Each one worse than the last. But slowly, incredibly slowly, I started making progress. I ripped out all the damaged subfloor and replaced it with plywood from Home Depot. I rewired the bathroom and kitchen myself, probably not up to code, but functional. I learned that if you're persistent enough, YouTube can teach you almost anything. The hardest part wasn't the physical work. It was the loneliness. I'd be there until 11 p.m. on weeknights, covered in dust and sweat, while my friends were out at bars or playing video games. My co-workers started calling me house boy because I'd show up with paint under my fingernails and sawdust in my hair. 3 months in, I'd spent $8,200 on materials and was maybe 60% done. The house was starting to look like a house again, but I was exhausted. Physically, emotionally, financially exhausted. That's when I met Sarah. She was a contractor working on the house next door, a complete gut renovation by some investor from Manhattan. During my lunch breaks, I'd watch her crew work and try to learn techniques. One day, she came over and introduced herself. "You're the kid doing all this work yourself?" she asked. I nodded. "Mind if I take a look?" She walked through my property, taking notes on her phone. After about 10 minutes, she said something that changed everything. "You're actually doing pretty good work for a beginner, but you're doing it the hard way. If you want to finish this project and make money, you need to be smarter about it." Sarah became my unofficial mentor. She taught me which renovations actually add value and which ones are just expensive cosmetics. She showed me how to buy materials wholesale. Most importantly, she connected me with her network, other contractors who could do specialized work for cost. Her electrician friend rewired the whole house properly for $1,200 instead of the $4,000 I'd been quoted. Her plumber fixed all the major issues for $800. Suddenly, my $40,000 renovation budget became achievable. Month 5, I was in the final push. New floors, fresh paint, updated fixtures. The transformation was incredible. This house that had been a disaster was becoming something beautiful. Something someone would actually want to live in. But I was cutting it close on Tony's deadline. I had 3 weeks left on the loan, and I still needed to list the property and find a buyer. The stress was eating me alive. I'd lost 20 pounds from working so much and eating so little. My mom was worried I was having a breakdown. I listed the property for $78,000. The first weekend, we had 12 showings. 8 people made offers. The highest offer was $82,000 from a young couple who were first-time homebuyers. They loved what I'd done with the place. The closing was scheduled for exactly 1 week before Tony's loan was due. If anything went wrong, inspection issues, financing problems, cold feet, I'd lose everything. That week felt like the longest week of my life. Every phone call from my realtor made my heart stop. But on Thursday afternoon, she called with the words I'd been praying to hear. "Michael, we're cleared to close. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll never forget walking out of that title company with a check for $51,320. After paying Tony back his $30,000 plus interest, after realtor fees and closing costs, I'd made $18,500 profit on a $29,680 investment in 6 months. It wasn't the $32,000 I'd originally projected, but it was proof that this could work. That a kid with no money, no experience, and no connections could make money in real estate if he was willing to work harder than everyone else. I called my mom from the parking lot. "Ma, I did it. I made money." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm proud of you, Michael. But please tell me the next one won't be in Newark." I laughed. But the truth was, I was already driving to look at my next potential property, because I'd caught the bug. The real estate bug. And there was no cure. That night, as I was celebrating with a beer on my mom's porch, my phone rang. It was Sarah. "Michael, I need to tell you something about that property you just sold," she said, her voice strange. I was talking to the contractor next door, and he mentioned something about 247 Clinton Avenue. About its history. What kind of history? The kind that might explain why it was listed so cheap, and why the seller was so eager to get rid of it. My stomach dropped. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "There was a murder there, Michael. 3 years ago, and the case was never solved."